Hi, everybody. It's Peg Fitzpatrick of my book club, and I am super excited today to have my guest who is on camera right now,
Hi,
Aliza
everyone.
Licht. She is joining me from New York City, and I am Peg Fitzpatrick, and I am here from New Hampshire. So we are across the country, but not as far as you could be across the country. Um, Aliza wrote a book that I have been dying to get, and I got a pre-order copy of Leave Your Mark. Look at that cover; it's amazing. Land your dream job, kill it in your career, and rock social media. She covers so much territory in this book, so I'm super excited to get talking about it. I just want to give you a little bio on Aliza if you don't know her. She is a social media superstar. She started with PR, but she's also moved over to social media, which we'll talk about a little bit. She's a global fashions communication executive, and she's the voice behind Donna Karan, New York. But she's here today as herself, Aliza Licht, which is the great part that she is behind a brand, but she is also a brand herself. She's known for her chatty, intimate tone, and she's also become beloved for her top-notch career advice. She's live doing all the things that we're going to talk about today. So that's one of the things that means the most to me is when someone's actually doing all the things that they write about. So this is Aliza's first book, and it's a great story that she tells through the book, but there's also a ton of practical advice. So I don't want to read the whole bio. I just want to get into it so we can talk about Leave Your Mark and what we can pick up in the next half hour with Aliza. So that was like a brief, quick intro. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Peg, thank you, first of all, for hosting this. By the way, you guys, Peg just passed 1 million followers on Google+. I have 11, I think, which is
Actually,
very impressive.
it's a
But
million everywhere. If you total up all my stuff, it's a million.
amazing, amazing, so impressive. And Peg has her own book, The Art of Social, which is brilliant, and it's it's power tips for power users, which I think is a genius tagline. So Peg and I became friends really through Twitter, right? We met at that conference. I forget which one, but we met at a
It was
conference.
Dave Kirpin's Likeable
Oh
conference.
yes, it was Likeable Media. Yes, it was Likeable Media, and we hit it off with your 12 most. I remember exactly. So basically, I've been with Donna Karan for 17 years, and my job is 99% traditional public relations. And then in 2009, I started DQ1 PR Girl on Twitter, and it's been quite a journey since then. But through Twitter, I've loved to mentor, and I've been doing a lot of it virtually. So I was lucky to have the opportunity to put it all in a book and hopefully share some good advice that I've learned the hard way, people. It's not all roses and glamour, trust me.
No, because you never know what's going to happen, right?
No, you don't.
So I love the story of how we met because I think it's a perfect example of how social media and networking work.
100%.
It's like neither one of us at that point, we were both just on social media. You were, there speaking at the conference about your experience, and I was a conference attendee actually covering social media for the conference, like from my Twitter account and stuff. But we're both good networkers. And even though we didn't know that either one of us would write a book, 3 years later, here we are. And it was a great connection to have later, which I think is something that people don't always think about, that someone that you meet might not be someone that you need, not that you need something from, but would be a great connection for later. But, it turned out to be great for both of us.
Yeah, I believe, and I always say this, you need to build your network before you need your network. And I think it goes, it's always a two-way street. And I think, the best business is good karma and helping people share their stories, and hopefully the favor will be returned. So
I think I agree with that, and Guy does too. That's one of the things that we talk about a lot is networking, because some people spend a lot of time asking for things, asking for people to share things, and really the best way is for it to be organic and have like for example, my book club. I literally was dying for your book to come out because I look at everything from a marketing perspective, and you look at things from a PR perspective, and we meet in the social media in the middle. So to me, that's really interesting because even if we were trying to solve the same problem, we might have a different way to get there.
Absolutely. We're like two halves of the same coin.
We need to work together.
And we are working together tonight.
Yeah, definitely. So how did you get started using social media? You talked about it a little bit. You just kind of found Twitter. Like how is that evolution from your traditional PR things, which you still do, to using social media? Because I don't know if everybody knows your great backstory.
So, like every company, you sit around talking about stuff you're going to do. And we were sitting around in a marketing meeting talking about starting on social. This was back in 2009. No fashion brands were really in the space at the time. Right. And, you touch it, you own it, right? So I sort of came to the table with the idea that PR would be a great lens to sort of tell the brand story through. And at the time, I was obsessed with Gossip Girl. This was 2009, remember? It's really good back then. And I thought, wow, what a great idea to say, look at Gossip Girl. She's anonymous. People follow her. They don't really need to know who she is to get the juice of the story. And that was sort of what I modeled it after. And of course, I had no idea what I was doing, Peg. Obviously, you know that.
Right. Like,
but,
what's a tweet?
What's a tweet? You learn as you go. And what really drove me was the engagement and the building of the community. And that was the part that I got addicted to. And yeah. I feel that it's an incredible way to connect with people.
And I feel like you changed your whole industry too, because I know doing research back when I first met you, you really changed your whole industry and how things work in that industry. And I remember at that conference, we talked about something, I think it was Storify, where you could like save the tweets up and then add it. And then you went that night to an industry event and you used it, and like, just the fact that you can change the way traditional things are done, because the worst thing to say is that's how we've always done it. If you said, oh no, PR should definitely just, be press releases and email to people or phone calls. Imagine, the brand outreach, which, you have from that.
I think you're being very generous with saying that I changed the industry, but I don't think I can't take credit for that. But I think that I'm very open to technology and I love technology. So I always love to jump on what excites me. And I think PR absolutely needed a makeover. And I think social media was the way to go.
Well, you're being really modest though, because you have won a lot of awards in your industry. So you guys can Google it later. She's done a lot of really awesome stuff. Which honestly was not that your goal was to go win awards either, right? I mean, it's just you're doing what you love. So that's the best part, right?
And actually doing what you love with the support of management, because you cannot do it alone, right? So it would have never taken off if I didn't have that support.
Some brands are afraid, they don't even want it. And usually it's the PR people. Maybe it's because you're a forward thinker.
I think they were all forward thinkers actually, because, you may be a forward thinker, but you could have legal block you, or you could have somebody in the infrastructure block you. And I think that's the hardest part for brands, is getting that management trust to say, you know what, you can't approve every tweet, but you can look at them after and read them and see if you like them. And that's sort of, I mean, that's the only way to do it. If you want to have that nimble ability, which I think, I've never had a content calendar ever. It's completely off the cuff. That's how I am. I shake, I move, I go. I can't be held to a schedule.
I'm actually surprised you're not tweeting right now, or maybe you are tweeting right now.
I could tweet if you let me, but you said that would ruin our video, so I'm not going to do it.
You can if you want. Okay, so one of the things I loved was that you said, forget the long-term career goal, nail what's in front of you, and your next step will be crystal clear. How did you get your foot in the door and create your path?
So first of all, I want to really clarify this statement, because I feel like we get told year after year, like, make sure you plan it out and you have a 5-year plan. And certainly in certain areas, businesses, you have to project and you have to see the future as best you can. What I mean when I say that is, we're not psychic. You can think, okay, in 5 years, I might want to do X, but the path will change so much between now and then. So I've always been someone who said, okay, what's my job right this second? And what's the thing I see right in front of me? What's my next move? And I've always given 200% to what I'm doing right this second, and then had my eye just a little bit ahead. So you're not in a fog and you're not in a bubble, but you're not scaring yourself into thinking, I better map this whole thing out for 5 years or it's going to be a failure. Because I think at the end of the day, we're faced with decisions daily, and you can't know. I mean, my 5-year plan, I was supposed to be a doctor. I graduated with neurobiology and physiology. So how did my 5-year plan work out? Not very well, right? Although it wouldn't hurt to be a plastic surgeon right now as I get older, but you know, it didn't work out. I had to foil that plan and I had to make a new path. So, you know, when you decide your junior year that you're not going to do what you set out to do, you can't change your major. You're left to finish it. So, you know, back then I was at LinkedIn this morning speaking there, and you know, I didn't have LinkedIn. I didn't have Google. There was nothing.
I know. We actually, back then, you know, our 5-year path was more, there weren't as many choices or as many avenues.
Not at all.
You really had to make a better connection. I don't know, some ways it's harder now when you look at, like, you can only make a digital connection. If your online stuff is not fantastic, I don't know how people do it. And you really have to know people, because you don't even get the opportunity to meet people face to face like we would.
No, it's true. But, you know, conversely, back then, you know, I wanted to work in a magazine. That's what I decided to do. So I bought magazines and I went through the mastheads and I tried to find names of people, because I knew that sending it to HR, the black hole of HR where they get a million applications, was probably not going to do it. So, you know, I did it just the real old-fashioned way. And now, I mean, I don't think that every single person needs to have this big social media profile and all these followers. I feel like LinkedIn is such a resource, first of all. And I also think that if you do have a presence, that's where you can trip yourself up professionally. Because if it's not right for what you do, or you're posting stuff that's on there that's questionable, that's where it can get very tricky.
It can be a slippery slope if you're not managing things the right way.
Absolutely.
I've seen some really cool online resumes, though. There was this guy who wanted to get a job at Snapchat, so he made a Snapchat resume, a Snapchat story of why they should hire him. And I was like, and it made it on BuzzFeed. It was like all over the place. I don't know if he got an interview, but what a great idea, right?
Clever. But the most important thing is tailored to the company you're pitching.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do.
It was perfect. Yeah.
I hope he got that job.
I hope he did. I hope he at least got an interview, because I thought that was a great idea.
Really smart.
So I loved every chapter. So I had to pick and choose because we only have a half hour. But I loved being your own publicist, because you're a professional publicist, but it's a little bit harder to be a publicist for yourself, which you're probably seeing a little more now that you're working on your book launch.
Yes.
Can you explain the publicist strategy for brand awareness, for building brand awareness?
So I think it starts with, what is your best asset? You know, what are you good at? What do you consider yourself an expert in? Even if you're not an expert, what could you sort of carve out to sort of be, you know, someone who is able to speak on something? And when you're building, if you have a small business, or you want to build your own personal brand, or even you just want to enhance your own reputation, I think it's about thinking about what you're great at and what value you can add, and really playing up those parts. You know, when we show a collection, maybe there's 40 looks, and maybe, you know, only, I don't know, 4 of them are quote unquote on trend with what the industry's doing. So we look at our collection and we think, okay, well, you know what? Red is a trend. We're going to really push the hell out of those 4 red looks. So you have to sort of hone in on that. And I think that's the first step. And then beyond that, it's thinking about how you're messaging, where you're messaging, and sort of what areas you need to really work on. So sometimes it's not about, you know, face-to-face. Sometimes it's about social. You know, not everything deserves a press release, right? So sometimes it's about sharing your own message. So there's a lot of considerations that I actually walk through in the book, as you know, that they sort of detail how to tailor a pitch, depending on what you're doing.
Pitches are tough. Well, we'll segue into that one then, because in your job, you give a lot of pitches, but you also receive a lot of pitches. So can you give some tips for a good email pitch? Like, what would make it for you to actually read to the end and respond?
I think, first of all, people don't spend enough time thinking about their subject lines. You know, think about how many emails you get a day. If it has the little words that say forward, okay, how many people, why am I going to open a forward that's from a stranger? I'm not. You know, you have to really make the person feel special. This is not a new concept.
Right.
You're pitching me because I'm special and you want my attention. And then beyond that, I think no one has time to read. You know, you get these long emails. No. Visual helps, having catchy words, having interesting things to say. I actually got a pitch recently from an e-commerce site as like, they were like my representative for sales. It's like a home site. And she made this really personal pitch, and she's out of Boston, and she's like, can you believe we've gotten 101 inches of snow? Here's my backyard. And I was like, I don't even know this person, but I'm checking out her backyard right now. And I was like, wow, your backyard is covered in snow. But you know what? We made a connection that way. And it was personal, and she let me into her world. And I have now bought a bunch of stuff from her. And I think it just goes to show you, it was like a cold pitch. Yeah. The other thing is, you know, people, you know, mass emails. I mean, how many times are you privy to the BCC where you know everyone's getting it, or worse, it's like 1,000 people in the to section, and you're like, thank you for giving me this contact list.
Yeah, I know. You know, those really are so bad. So bad. I know you really do have to send an individual email for each pitch.
You really do.
There's no way to get around it and customize it.
And even for jobs, I was speaking to someone yesterday, and I had asked her about her cover letter and her resume, and I said, well, who did you make it out to? And she said, dear hiring manager. And exactly, your face says it all. I mean, that is not going to get anyone's attention. The hiring manager does not care because it's not special. It's not personalizing. You have to think about the competition, how many resumes they're getting.
Well, and gosh, there's no excuse for not finding out who the person is with the internet these days.
No excuse.
I mean, you could probably find the right people on LinkedIn and connect and send an inbox.
You could find their social security numbers and how much they paid for their house. Of course you can find that. You can find anything.
Okay. Don't bring that up in the interview. If you get an interview, wow, you got a great deal on that house, sir. That'd be like too much information, just a little bit too much.
Or you overpaid for that house, sir.
Oh, I don't know. Well, maybe people would know that were applying for a job. I don't know. That's funny. So let's segue a little bit over to networking, because networking is so important. And there's a lot of different ways to network now with email, with social events, and online. Can you talk about how you've networked and used networking? Because I think obviously that's one of your amazing skills as a PR person, is the connections that you've made. And how can people do that? Like, how, if someone is really unsure, like they don't even really know, like they're just starting out, it's your ideal reader for your book, and they don't have a career yet, but they need to start building like you did.
I think that you have to get comfortable going to events and making like 3 new contacts at that event. And the best way to do it is to go by yourself. Because when you go by yourself, you are forced to talk to people. And when you make those connections and you speak to people that night, follow up the next day. Make sure that you either get a business card or you know how to contact them. LinkedIn, I think, is really interesting here, because just because you met someone doesn't mean they want to be LinkedIn with you, right? Right. So I think the best way is to reach out via email. Just say, you know, it was great meeting you last night. I hope we can stay in touch. Here's my info, whatever. And then stay in touch. And I think the key, especially in PR for certain, but I think in any business, is to maintain the relationships. Don't just contact people when you need them, because people hate that. Yeah. So keep in touch with people, stay on it, build those relationships. And then when people do nice things for you, thank them. People forget to say thank you. By the
wayside, I know. I agree. Thank you is important.
Yeah.
And I do something that I think you also do, because you actually saw my book launch. I just kind of watch what people do too and find ways that I can help them.
Oh, heck, I mean, you taught me Thunderclap. I mean, it's the best platform ever, and I can't wait for it to come out next week. But I think that when you're willing to help other people and you're willing to learn from other people, you're just that much better off. I mean, no one can do anything alone. No one can.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. And I love learning too. I'm always, looking for new ways to learn things. So seeing what other people do is the best way to learn.
Absolutely.
So I was going to talk a little bit about online brand voice and personality. Since you have created such a great persona for yourself, and now you're working on your book launch and your own personal social media, can you talk about how people can be themselves and create that kind of brand that connects with other people? Because I think that people, one of the reasons, not that it's a brand, but people love talking to you online on your own social. So how do you feel like you've connected well with people?
I think first and foremost, you have to be a human. I know that sounds silly, but I think one of the reasons why DKNY PR Girl was so successful is because it was a way to humanize a brand in a way that's different than the designer voice. And I think at the end of the day, my goal was simply to be everyone's girlfriend. Like, I'm your friend. And that was a very sincere want. And I really care about the relationships that I build. And that's why I've always said, it's not followers, it's friends, because I do feel that way. And when people tweet at me now for career advice, like, I want to know what happens. Like, someone will say, like, I wrote my thesis on DKNY PR Girl or whatever. And I'm like, I want to see it. Send it to me. Like, and I'll get it and I'll read it and I'll learn from it myself. So I do care about the engagement. That's my number one thing. And I want it to be an open dialogue, and I want it to be friendly and approachable. And I want people to know that I appreciate when they contact me.
Yeah, I have a problem because whenever I go to your Twitter feed, then I end up shopping. I always see something. I'm like, I'm always clicking on something.
Sorry, I'm not sorry. I think it's appropriate there.
Yeah, I know. It works. I'm like a clicker too. So, oh wait, a purse, click. That's all I need to see is like a purse to get me going. So I loved when you talked about casting yourself in a new leading role. Can you talk a little bit about how people could create their own leading role? Because I think that's one of the things is a lot of people wait for life to happen to them, and they don't realize that they are the star of the show and that they could do that. So I thought it was great. I love the way you just pulled out all those pieces, and your pro tips are amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, first of all, I think it goes back to the idea of personal branding. And personal branding, I mean, if you have 1 million followers, that's fantastic, but that's not the goal. To me, personal branding is not about being famous or having a huge presence. It's about how people perceive you in your personal life. If you're a working mom, like, you go to school, how are people perceiving you? You go to the office. Do your colleagues like you? What would people say about you? And, and really, what would you say about yourself? Aligning those two things, how you think about yourself versus how others perceive you, and getting those to match. Because a lot of times we see ourselves one way and other people don't. So that's really the art of personal branding. And I think that at the end of the day, we all get so caught up in chasing after things like, the to-do list, the email inbox, running errands, calling the plumber when something breaks. There's a million things. And we are probably the last people on the list, that sort of constant, for sure. I mean, I'm always sacrificing myself at the end of the day to make sure that everything gets done. But I think everyone needs to take the time to really sort of care about themselves and think about, what can I do to learn more? What can I do to challenge myself? I mean, writing this book was a challenge because when the publisher contacted me, I didn't really want to do it. I was intimidated to do it. I thought, when am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? And that's really the reason I made myself do it, because I felt like, you know what, you're being lazy and you're being scared. And I have these talks with myself every once in a while. And that's really why I made myself do it, because I said, you know what, no, you have to stretch beyond where you're comfortable. And I think that that's really important. So creating the brand of you is thinking about how you speak to people, how you treat people. You know, nothing makes me cringe more than when I hear someone being really rude to a waiter or like, you know, a taxi driver. You know, how you interact, these things all sort of come together and make you the person you are. And I just think social media, if you have a presence, you should view yourself almost in third person and think about what do you look like to the world?
I look at my own stuff all the time. I go back and look at my Twitter feed, like, did I too much of this, not enough of that?
Absolutely. And it's, listen, I mean, the best leaders are always self-assessing, right? And I think that's a great way for people to be. And sometimes, you know, I look back at my feed and I'm like, oh my God, why did I say all that? And that's fine. You know, you're not going to always be perfect, but having the wherewithal to look outside of yourself and then look back.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So, okay, well, I think we can get through one more. We'll try really fast. I loved when you said you're 100% being judged. Can you explain how what you do with your online life, you know, that what we kind of just covered it a little bit, but like being judged, it's not the harshness of it, but just the perception of it.
I think, you know, everyone says, oh, don't judge a book by its cover. Okay, everyone judges a book by its cover, right? So when you are...
Thankfully, it's super cute.
Thank you. When you are... Take it out of social for a second, okay? Take it into... You're presenting to a room full of people. You have a big meeting. You're going to walk in that room, and before you open your mouth, the people around that table are going to immediately make a judgment. Your image matters. Did you look like you rolled out of bed? Did you look like you haven't showered in a week? You know, all these things come together to inform people's opinions. And I think when you don't have to be perfect all the time, but when you are going to meet new people, when you are going to network, when you are going to pitch something, certainly when you're going on an interview, you know, pull it together. Think about the company that you're going to meet with. Are you going to fit into that brand culture? And I think people applying for jobs really need to think about doing that research about that company, about those people before they go in. So that when you walk in and you open your mouth, they're like, hey, I can totally picture this person working here. So it's not about being harsh and judging people. It's about people themselves actually doing the judging and really critiquing their own self.
I totally agree. So we are just wrapping up, and in our last little bit, I wanted to know if you wanted to give one last leave your mark little tip advice for somebody who is going to definitely want to buy your book when they can next week.
So I think my biggest advice is to not ignore opportunities. Sometimes I feel like people don't understand that when someone graciously makes a connection for them or an introduction, it's something that needs to be followed up, A, well, but B, in a timely fashion. And realize that when someone goes out on a limb to connect you with another person in business or even in their personal life, really cherish that. Because a lot of times people think like, well, yeah, why wouldn't she connect me if she knows that person? But it's a gift. It's a gift for someone to make a connection for you, and you should thank that person and be very gracious about it. And then also make sure that you're not, you know, wasting people's time and that you're appreciative of their time. Because I think, you know, as we talk about mentoring, and I hope this book is a mentor to people, you know, one of the most important things you can do if you do find your mentor is to make sure that you're using their time properly and that you're thanking them for their time. Because it's not their job to mentor, right? It's a gift.
Right. Awesome. I love that advice. I'm just like listening. I'm like, yes, I wish I was like 22, so this book would be my guide for the world. But
so do I on many levels, but you know, hopefully better late than never. And Peg, you've done amazing things. You don't need a guide.
I still like guides. Okay,
you wrote the guide, girl.
So we're going to wrap it up because we are just about the 30-minute mark. I just want to show Aliza's book one more time. Leave Your Mark. It comes out next week. So it's in pre-order right now. You can still get it now, and it will be shipped to you on the day when it's live, which is the best because you can have it right in your hand right away. I personally feel like this is going to be the book for people who graduate, because it really helps you know what the next steps are. The things that you don't learn in school that you need to get a job are going to be in this book. Or if you're just a career person just getting started, or if you want to make a change, this book is amazing. So I would love to thank my guest, Aliza Licht. And it was great connecting with you. And I wish you so much luck with your book.
Thank you. And I just want to say one last thing besides thank you very much for hosting me. The book the advice is given through my career story. So it's not just this dry, like, do this, don't do that. So it's all my trials and tribulations, and there were many, and then pulling out the advice. And it is really for any industry, not just fashion.
Right. Any career. It really translates to everything. And it's really funny too, which I forgot to mention that because I'm so focused on the power tips that it's hilarious though. It's a really good book. So,
and actually until May 5th, really, if you upload your receipt on my website, you'll get a signed book plate to put inside.
And that's awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much. I'm gonna sign off.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, bye. See you on Twitter.
Okay.